The phone rings at 3:47 in the morning, and Daniel Cole almost doesn't answer it, because his hand still doesn't work the way it used to, because 3 months ago a drunk driver folded his car around a highway divider and left him with a titanium rod in his femur and a tremor in his right hand that no surgeon has been able to explain. He gets the phone on the fourth ring. It's not a hospital. It's not his physical therapist. It's a voicemail notification, already 3 days old, buried under insurance calls he's been avoiding. And when he plays it, the voice that comes through is his wife's. "Daniel, I need you to hear this and not call me back right away." A pause, the kind Vanessa always took before she said something she'd rehearsed. "I can't keep doing this. The appointments, the physical therapy schedule, all of it. I didn't sign up to be someone's nurse. I know that sounds cruel, but you're not the man I married anymore, and I'm not going to spend the next 20 years managing a burden." The word sits in the room longer than the message does. He plays it again, and a third time, because some part of him is checking whether he misheard it, whether the medication is doing something to his ears the way it sometimes does to his balance. He didn't mishear it. His wife of 11 years called him a burden into a voicemail she apparently never meant for him to actually hear, because the message was never delivered to him. It was routed, by some quirk of the new phone he'd been issued after the accident, to a shared family cloud backup. She hadn't sent it to him, she'd sent it to someone else, and forgotten that his number was still linked to hers. He sits up in the dark, favoring the leg that still doesn't trust concrete, and he does not cry, and he does not call her. He opens the message details instead and looks at the recipient field and reads a name that isn't his. That's the part that will matter later, not the word burden, the name. If revenge has a starting point, it is usually not the wound. It's the moment you realize the wound was on purpose. If a betrayal like this has ever cut you to the bone, hit like right now and drop a comment telling me who you'd protect first if you were in Daniel's position. Subscribe, because it gets worse before it gets righteous. For 6 weeks after that night, Daniel does something almost nobody expects of him. He does nothing. He goes to physical therapy on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He answers emails from the office with his left hand because the right one still shakes on a keyboard. He lets Vanessa believe the divorce papers she filed are landing on a broken man who's too tired to fight, because that's the story she needs to tell herself, and stories people need to tell themselves are useful. He signs what his own lawyer tells him to sign. He says, "I understand," in a flat, even voice to a mediator who clearly expected him to break down in the room, and doesn't. His life from the outside resumes an ordinary shape. He moves into a rental 2 miles from the house they built together. He drives himself to appointments now, slower, more careful, gripping the wheel with his good hand. His assistant, Priya, brings him coffee he doesn't ask for and doesn't complain when meetings run long, because he processes things slower than he used to, on paper, out loud. Cole Devlin's Structural Engineering, the firm he co-founded 14 years ago with a man named Ethan Voss, keeps running without him needing to be in the building every day, which he tells himself is a mercy. Ethan's been covering client calls. Ethan's been handling things. That's the phrase Ethan uses in every email, handling things. There's only one detail that snags, quiet and small, easy to explain away. 3 weeks after the accident, while Daniel was still in a hospital bed with a feeding tube and a fog of anesthesia thick enough that he doesn't remember most of that week, a document went through the firm's records, changing the beneficiary structure on his Keyman life insurance policy and adjusting the buy-sell agreement between him and Ethan. His signature is on it. He doesn't remember signing it. He tells himself the same thing anyone tells themselves. "I was drugged out of my mind for 10 days. Of course, I don't remember every form I signed. Hospitals are a blur of paperwork. This is normal." He almost believes it. Almost is the operative word. He starts keeping a folder, not out of suspicion yet, more out of the discipline that got him through 2 structural engineering degrees and a decade of building things that don't fall down. He likes documentation. He likes knowing where the load-bearing points are. So he starts pulling copies of everything with his name on it from that 10-day window, the way he'd pull inspection records on a bridge that had started, for no clear reason, to hum wrong under traffic. The first real crack comes from Marcus. Marcus Ayer has known Daniel since undergrad, been best man at his wedding, and now works 2 floors down from Cole Devlin at a firm that handles corporate insurance underwriting, which means Marcus has access to things Daniel technically shouldn't ask about, and Marcus knows it, and agrees to look anyway with the visible discomfort of a man who understands exactly how much trouble this could cause him. I looked at what you sent me, Marcus says, meeting Daniel at a diner outside the city where nobody they know eats. He keeps his voice low even though the nearest table is empty. Danny, the key man policy, it wasn't just adjusted, it was increased, substantially, 2 weeks before your accident. Daniel doesn't say anything for a moment. He turns his coffee cup a quarter turn, an old habit, something to do with his hands that isn't shaking. Increased by how much? Almost triple, and the beneficiary allocation changed too. It used to be structured so a payout went to the company for continuity, with a smaller personal rider to Vanessa. Now it's inverted. Company gets a token amount. The bulk goes to a personal trust. Marcus slides a folded printout across the table like it's radioactive. A trust that was established 4 days before the policy amendment. You're not the trustee. Who is? Vanessa, and Ethan's listed as successor trustee. Daniel looks at the paper for a long time. He doesn't touch it right away. 2 weeks before the accident, he says finally, like he's testing whether the sentence holds weight when spoken aloud. So somebody thought I might die before I almost did. Marcus doesn't answer that. He doesn't have to. There's something else, Marcus says, quieter still. The accident report. I know a guy at the insurance company that handled the auto claim, totally separate carrier, nothing to do with the key man policy. He mentioned off the record, Danny. Seriously off the record, that the other driver's blood alcohol was inconsistent with witness statements about how long he'd allegedly been drinking. Like the timeline didn't line up clean. Meaning? Meaning I don't know what it means. I'm not an accident reconstructionist. I'm telling you what a claims guy said over beers because he thought it was a weird footnote, not because he thinks it's a conspiracy. Don't build a house on it yet. Marcus looks at him hard, but don't ignore it either. Daniel doesn't ignore it. He starts a second folder. The next 4 weeks move like this. A question opens, and before it closes, 2 more appear behind it. The way cracks propagate through concrete under sustained load. Never one clean fracture. Always a spreading pattern that tells you the failure started somewhere you haven't looked yet. He finds the second crack in the firm's internal messaging archive, which he still has read access to as a partner, even though he hasn't logged in months. He's looking for something mundane, a project file, and instead finds a thread from 4 months before his accident, buried in a subfolder Ethan created and then, apparently, forgot wasn't private, between Ethan and Vanessa, not about the firm. You keep saying when, not if. I need you to actually mean it. I mean it, I just need the timing right. He's not going to sign over control voluntarily, Van, you know that. He'd fight it for years out of stubbornness alone. So we don't ask him to sign over control. We make him unable to hold it. Daniel reads that line 4 times. His hand, for once, is steady. He doesn't confront anyone. He closes the laptop, drives to Marcus's apartment at 10 at night, and sits at his kitchen table while Marcus reads the printed thread twice, in silence, his jaw tightening more with every line. Danny, this reads like they were planning to push you out of the company before the accident ever happened. It reads like more than that, Daniel says. His voice doesn't rise. It goes, if anything, flatter, the tone he used to use standing over blueprints when a contractor tried to cut corners on rebar spacing. Make him unable to hold it. Not fire him, not buy him out, unable. You think, Marcus stops himself, that's a big leap, even with everything else. I'm not leaping anywhere yet, Daniel says. I'm collecting load data. You don't accuse a structure of failing until you know exactly where the stress is concentrated. He looks at the printout again, but I want the accident report, the full one, not the summary the insurance company gave me, the police file. Getting it takes 3 weeks and a favor from a records clerk Marcus knows from college, and when it finally lands in Daniel's inbox at 11 at night, he reads it standing up, coat still on, because he hasn't been able to sit still since Marcus called to say it came through. The other driver, a 26-year-old named Colton Reyes with 2 prior DUIs, told police at the scene that he'd been at a bar for maybe an hour and a half before getting behind the wheel. Toxicology and the bar's own register, pulled during the investigation, cross-checked by an insurance adjuster doing due diligence on the claim, put him there for closer to 4 hours, drinking steadily on a night he wasn't scheduled to work and wasn't a regular. A single line in the adjuster's notes, easy to skim past if you weren't looking for it. Bar tab for table 14 paid in cash by third party. Server recalls a woman checking in on him twice during the evening, description not obtained. Daniel sits down after all, finally, the coat still on. He doesn't know yet, not with certainty, that the woman checking on Colton Reyes twice that night was arranging a man's blood alcohol level like a contractor timing a concrete pour. He doesn't know it. But for the first time since the phone rang at 3:47 in the morning, he lets himself consider, coldly and without flinching, that his accident might not have been an accident at all, that it might have been infrastructure built quietly by people who loved him, to make sure he'd never walk back into control of his own life. The gut punch, when it finally lands whole, doesn't come from a document. It comes from Vanessa's own mouth, and she has no idea he's listening. It takes Daniel 2 more weeks to engineer the moment, and he does it the way he'd approach any structural problem, patiently, without wasted motion. He tells his lawyer he wants one final amicable meeting with Vanessa to discuss the house settlement, framed as an olive branch, framed as a broken man trying to make peace before signing away what's left. Vanessa agrees almost too quickly. She suggests the old house their house because she says it'll be less painful, familiar ground. Daniel understands, by then, that Vanessa has never once, in 11 years, chosen a location for sentiment. She chooses locations for control. He arrives early. Ethan's car is already in the driveway. He doesn't go to the door immediately. He stands by the side gate, in the shadow of the same oak tree he planted the year they moved in, and he listens through a kitchen window cracked open for the June heat, and he records it on a phone held flat against his coat, because by now he understands exactly how much a recording will matter and exactly how little his word alone will. He's still asking questions, Ethan is saying, agitated in a way Daniel has rarely heard from him. Ethan Voss built his entire professional identity on being unbothered. Marcus pulled the beneficiary structure. I know he did. I saw the access log. So what if he did? Vanessa's voice cool, the voice she used on vendors who tried to overcharge them for the wedding 11 years ago, back when Daniel thought that coolness was strength he admired instead of a blade he hadn't learned to see yet. Daniel doesn't finish things, Ethan. That's the whole point. That's why this worked. He documents, he broods, he never actually confronts anyone until it's too late. He's going to sit in that rental with his little folders feeling smart, and by the time he does anything, the trust is fully vested and the company restructuring is done. And if he goes to the police about Colton? A pause, Daniel doesn't breathe. Colton doesn't know anything that connects to us. He got paid, he got drunk on his own time on a night I happened to be at that bar, and there's no paper trail because I made sure of that personally. Stop panicking. In 8 months, Daniel's disability filing will make him a legal liability for the firm's insurance anyway. We barely needed to push. We just needed to make sure he never came back sharp enough to fight it. The accident did most of the work. I just made sure it did enough. There it is, not implied, not deniable. I just made sure it did enough. Daniel stands very still under the oak tree for almost a full minute after that. And something in him that has been quietly, deliberately holding itself in check for 4 months finally settles into place. Not rage, nothing so loud as rage, but something colder and more permanent, the feeling of a beam finding its final position under load and locking there. If you felt that line land like I did, pause right now and comment the one word you'd use for what Vanessa just admitted. I want to see it. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is exactly the moment to fix that, because Daniel's about to stop being patient. He doesn't confront them that night. He doesn't confront them at all. He drives to his lawyer's office the next morning, not the family lawyer handling the divorce, but a different one, a sharp, quiet woman named Elena Marsh who specializes in corporate fraud and whom Marcus recommended with the specific phrase, "She doesn't do dramatic, she does devastating." Daniel plays her the recording once. She listens with her eyes closed, hands folded, and when it ends she opens her eyes and says only, "Play it again," and listens a second time taking notes. "This is admissible if it's handled correctly," she says. "One-party consent state, you were on your own property's boundary, you weren't trespassing, you had no expectation they were discussing anything privileged. But a recording alone gets you leverage, not a conviction. We need the money trail to match what she said. Cash withdrawals, the bar payment, the trust formation dates, the insurance underwriting timeline. All of it needs to be airtight before you show your hand, because the moment they know you have this, they will destroy every piece of paper they can reach and blame you for the recording being doctored." "Then we don't show our hand," Daniel says. His voice again doesn't rise. "We let them think I'm still slow, still grieving, still filing sad little requests through Marcus that don't go anywhere, and we build the rest underneath them." Elena studies him for a moment with something that looks almost like approval. "You're not what I expected from the file. Marcus described you as gentle." "I am gentle," Daniel says, "with things that deserve it." Over the following 6 weeks, the investigation stops being reactive and becomes architecture. Elena's forensic accountant traces the cash that paid Colton Ray's bar tab back through a withdrawal pattern at 3 different ATMs, all within a mile of the bar, all made on Vanessa's debit card despite her insistence in a later deposition that she rarely carries cash. Marcus, now formally retained as a consultant rather than a nervous favor-doer, pulls a clean audit trail on the insurance policy amendment and finds the notary who witnessed Daniel's signature. A woman who, under gentle but pointed questioning from Elena, admits she notarized the document based on a photo ID and a signature that were both provided to her at the hospital by Vanessa, while Daniel was sedated, and per hospital records Elena subpoenas without alerting anyone. Not conscious enough at that hour to have signed anything at all. The forgery, once it's proven, changes the entire shape of the case. It's no longer a messy divorce with an ugly voicemail. It's insurance fraud, a forged legal instrument, and a financial motive tied to a documented conspiracy discussed on tape. The second twist arrives from a direction none of them expect. Colton Ray, the driver who hit Daniel's car, gets in touch, not through police, not through lawyers, but through a message to Daniel's personal email that Elena almost has him ignore as a scam, except the subject line makes her stop. "I know what she did, and I want out before it lands on me." They meet in Elena's office, Colton flanked by his own public defender, visibly frightened in the particular way of a man who's realized he was a tool and not a partner. He tells them Vanessa found him through a mutual acquaintance at the bar 2 months before the accident, paid him a few $100s in cash to be around on a specific night, told him nothing explicit about why, just that she'd make it worth his while if he happened to be drinking that evening and happened to still be driving home late. He swears, and Elena believes him, because his fear reads as genuine rather than rehearsed, that he had no idea it was connected to a planned collision, that he thought it was some kind of insurance scam involving his own car, not an assault on a specific man's body. "She never said his name," Colton says, staring at the table. "I didn't know there was a him. I thought I was just supposed to be visible. Drinking, that's it. I didn't know I was gonna hit anybody until it happened, and by then I was too far gone to stop the car in time." It's a horrifying distinction, and also, legally, a gift. Colton's willingness to testify against Vanessa in exchange for cooperation on his own charges gives Elena something no amount of forensic accounting could: a living witness to intent, someone who can place Vanessa orchestrating the specific conditions of the crash without needing to prove she personally struck the wheel. It also means the timeline accelerates. Elena warns Daniel that once Colton's public defender starts negotiating a deal, word could leak, prosecutors talk to prosecutors, defense attorneys talk to each other, This is a smaller legal community than people assume, and if Vanessa and Ethan sense the walls closing in before the case is fully built, they will scatter assets, lawyer up defensively, and turn the narrative into grieving, confused husband harasses ex-wife after accident, which juries disturbingly often believe. We move the timeline up, Elena says. Within 2 weeks, everything converges, the SEC-adjacent fraud filing on the insurance policy, the forged notarization complaint, and Colton's statement submitted together so no single piece can be picked apart in isolation. And you, she looks at Daniel, need to be the one who sets the final meeting. They need to think it's still just about the divorce. We're heading into the final stretch now, and if you've made it this far, stay with me, because the way Daniel takes this apart is not loud, and if you leave now, you'll miss the part that actually matters. Comment, staying, if you're locked in. The meeting Daniel sets is small and unremarkable on its surface. A request to finalize the divorce settlement paperwork at Elena's office, with both Vanessa and, at Daniel's specific, seemingly reasonable insistence, Ethan present, since the buy-sell agreement on the company is tangled up in the same conversation anyway, easier to handle it all at once. Vanessa arrives in the kind of composed, faintly performative calm she's worn through the entire process, a woman confident she is closing out an inconvenience. Ethan arrives 10 minutes later, tighter around the eyes than he used to be. The tale of a man who has spent months waiting for a shoe that hasn't dropped and has started to hope it won't. Daniel sits at the head of the conference table, hands steady, and does not raise his voice once during the entire hour that follows. He starts with the settlement paperwork, mundane, almost sedative in its dullness, letting Vanessa relax further into the belief that this is exactly what it appears to be. Then Elena slides across a single folder, and inside it is not a settlement addendum but a formal notice, a complaint filed that morning with the State Insurance Fraud Division, naming the forged notarization, attached forensic handwriting analysis, and the notary's signed statement. Vanessa's composure cracks a half-degree, recoverable, the kind of crack a trained liar papers over fast. This is absurd. Daniel, you signed that policy amendment yourself. You don't remember most of that week. That doesn't mean. I know I didn't sign it, Daniel says quietly, because I was unconscious at 6:40 p.m. on the 14th per my own hospital chart, and the notarization is timestamped 6:52 p.m. the same day. That's 12 minutes for a man in a medically induced state to wake up, sign a legal instrument, and go back under. Elena has the chart, so does the state now. Ethan starts to stand. Elena, without raising her voice either, says, "Sit down, Mr. Voss, or we can continue this conversation with the district attorney's office instead of in a room where you still have a chance to be useful to yourself." And something in the flatness of it makes him sit. Then Daniel plays the recording. He doesn't announce it dramatically. He simply sets his phone on the table, presses play, and lets Vanessa's own voice fill the room. He's going to sit in that rental with his little folders feeling smart. And the accident did most of the work. I just made sure it did enough. And watches her face while it plays, not with satisfaction, but with the same clinical attention he'd give a stress fracture finally visible under load. Vanessa doesn't speak for a long moment after it ends. When she does, her voice has lost its coolness entirely. "Where did you? That's not admissible. That's my private." "It's my property line," Daniel says. "My lawyers already confirmed it, but we're past the point where admissibility is the interesting question, Vanessa. Colton Reyes gave a full statement 3 days ago. He's cooperating with the district attorney in exchange for a reduced charge on his own DUI. He told them everything about the cash, the timing, being told to be visible. He didn't know your reasons. He knows your face, your car, and the exact amount you paid him." Ethan, pale now, says the only thing he says in the entire meeting. "Vanessa, what did you tell him?" And it isn't a question about Daniel. It's the sound of a man realizing, in real time, that the woman he built a conspiracy with never told him the full architecture of what she'd done, and that he has spent months as complicit as she is in something he only half understood. Daniel stands, slow but steady, no cane, no hesitation, the tremor in his right hand nearly gone now. Months of therapy and something harder and more useful than therapy having done their work. The insurance fraud filing is done, he says. The forgery complaint is done. The DA has Colton's statement and mine, and Alina's already spoken with the firm's board about the falsified buy-sell agreement, which means, Ethan, you're being removed as managing partner effective this afternoon, pending the outcome of a formal audit that I suspect is going to find quite a lot. None of this required me to raise my voice once. I wanted you both to notice that. He picks up his folder. At the door, he stops, not for effect, simply because there's one more thing that needs saying, plainly, without heat. You called me a burden in a voicemail you didn't mean to send me. I've thought about that word a lot these past few months. I think you used it because you needed me to be something small enough to justify what you were already planning to do to me. I wasn't small. I was just quiet while I built the case that's about to take apart both your lives. There's a difference. I hope you have time to learn it. He leaves them in the room together and does not look back to see which one of them speaks first. The takedown that follows over the next several months has none of the theater of the conference room. It happens in filings, hearings, and quiet procedural steps that grind forward with the same patience Daniel used to build the case in the first place. The Insurance Fraud Division confirms the forged notarization and refers the matter for prosecution. The amended Keyman policy and the trust are frozen pending investigation, then unwound entirely. The original beneficiary structure, company continuity, no personal windfall to a trust Daniel never authorized, reinstated by court order. Ethan is removed from the firm he co-founded, stripped of his equity stake through a forfeiture clause triggered by proven fraud against a partner, and the firm's board, informed in full, quietly begins the process of writing him out of every account and credential he once held. Colton Reyes pleads to a reduced charge and testifies. His cooperation becomes the spine of the case against Vanessa, who is charged with insurance fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The details of the staged conditions around Daniel's crash, treated by the prosecutor's office as aggravating, deliberate, and cold. Daniel attends none of the press that follows, gives no interviews, releases no statements. He sits through the depositions and the hearings with the same even, unhurried presence he had in the conference room, answers questions in a level voice, and goes home afterward to a rental that by winter he no longer needs because the house, his house, restored to him in full through the settlement once the fraud was established, is finally his again, empty of the two people who once decided, in a kitchen with the window cracked for the June heat, that his survival was an inconvenience to be engineered around. On a grey morning in late autumn, months after all of it is finished, Daniel stands alone in that kitchen with a cup of coffee he made with a steady right hand, looking out at the oak tree he planted the year they moved in. He doesn't think about Vanessa's sentencing hearing, 3 weeks away now, or about Ethan's name quietly vanishing from the firm's letterhead, or about the voicemail that started it all, still saved, unplayed, in a folder he has never deleted and never will. He just drinks the coffee and watches the light come up slow and grey over the yard and says nothing at all because there is, finally, nothing left that needs saying. Months later, the house is quiet in a way it was never quiet before, not empty, just settled. The way a structure settles once every load has finally found where it belongs. Vanessa's sentencing is a matter of public record now. Ethan's name is gone from the letterhead, gone from the industry entirely, the kind of quiet erasure that never makes headlines but ends careers all the same. Daniel doesn't celebrate any of it. He simply keeps building houses, bridges, a life engineered on his own terms, checked and rechecked, nothing left to chance. He learned the hard way that the people closest to you can become the heaviest weight you carry, and that the ones who call you a burden are usually the ones planning to leave you holding all of it alone. If this story hit you the way it hit me writing it, don't just scroll past it, hit like, drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Daniel's place, and subscribe so you're here for the next one, because there's always another story about the people who underestimate exactly who they're betraying. See you in the next one.